Hi folks, welcome back to Gardening in Nakusp with Ray. We'll start out in the Mediterranean garden, right over here. And I call it the Mediterranean garden just because it's the hottest place on the property. It's got the concrete sidewalk and it's got the wall against here. So here I put my hottest plants, and obviously there's no soil here, but with the use of these nice big pots, we can grow stuff right on top of the sidewalk. And here we have eggplants, which we've looked at before, and they're doing quite well. And now I've added the rosemary, because that's also a Mediterranean plant and likes it really warm. And I've got these, it's May 9th, Sunday, May 9th now, and we had quite a heavy frost last night. So I have these little containers, and if it looks like it's going to be frosty, I just put them over top, and that just keeps them nice and warm over the night. And I got some big buckets for the eggplants too. So we're just trying to, the daytime temperature is wonderful. Today's a little cooler, but it's just, we have to moderate that nighttime cold temperature just to keep our plants happy. And the important thing is, because we water these pots so much, we want to, every Sunday I try to feed them. So I give them a little bit of fish fertilizer, because you're watering them and you just water the nutrients out of the pots. And because you want them to do well, it's good for once a week to give them a little bit of liquid food. And
so all this is a little bit of nutrients down here, this runoff?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much do you feed your plants? Is it like a formula?
Well, there probably is a formula on the container, but I use Alaska fish fertilizer. I find it's really a nice one. And the place I found around here to get it is Silverton Building Supplies in Silverton. And it's a nice thick fertilizer, fish fertilizer. So I put about a dollop like this, the big cookie size, in the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket, then fill it up with water. And it seems to have a nice ratio that way. So what's blooming? Now here we have the trumpet gentian, Gentian ocalis, and we'll put the spelling up on the YouTube so it'll be easy to find. So these are just gorgeous. So you've heard of gentian blue? Well, this is what it comes from. So as well as the gentian, we have the pasque flower, Pulsatilla vulgaris, and it comes in different, like a purple, a red, and a white shades. And they're a gorgeous spring flower, often called the prairie crocus, because I guess they resemble a crocus that grows in the prairies. And these will seed down a lot. You can get them growing everywhere. So I let them grow for a little while. Like all these guys here are all babies off of the plant. So now I probably got enough of these. So what I do is, once they go into the old man's beard form, a little older than that, then I just pluck them off so I don't get plants growing all over the place. Looking at the euphorbia. So that's also blooming. That's a nice spring flower. And for those that walk the waterfront, there's a variety down there that's in bloom with a green foliage on it. This is a variety called Bonfire. So the green one is just called Euphorbia polychroma. And this one's Euphorbia polychroma fire, the name's going out of my head right now.
We'll find it.
We'll find it, yeah. But I love the foliage because it's got that little bit of maroon color to it, and then it really shows off the yellow flower. And there's another new variety called First Blush, which has got a variegated leaf, white and green variegated leaf with a little bit of pink blush on it too as well. I kind of like this, the maroon color. Anytime you get a nice colorful leaf, so even when it's finished blooming, you get that nice colorful leaf to it, and it just keeps makes interest in the garden. Like over behind you there, Joe, we have the Actea, or Cimicifuga, or also commonly called bugbane, and that's got a gorgeous purple leaf to it. And you can see that I have the stakes there, so it grows quite tall, and it blooms late in the year, a fall bloomer, and it's got a kind of a pinky white, small little flowers on a long stem. It's got a wonderful fragrance, and the fall bees just love it. They just flock around it. So again, you have all this greenery, and then you have just this nice hit of maroon color there, and it just adds a nice look to the bed. And while we're in the bed, this is a peony, and this is one of the first blooming peonies. You can see it's got the buds set already. whereas other peonies are just coming up, just forming their leaves. It's kind of a nice deep red color.
Oh, I can't wait.
And this one I got from my friend Jean Belcher, an old friend of mine that used to live in New Denver.
Now, do you get, is it ants that help with peonies?
Well, you don't necessarily need them, but they always go on there to, I guess, get the nectar is what they're doing. And people say you have to have the ants to have the peony open, but you don't have to have them. But it's just part of the cycle there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I thought it had something to do with their formic acid or...
Oh, well, I don't know that, but from what I've read is that you don't need them, but it's just part of the symbiotic cycle. So last week we seeded the radishes and the green onion sets and onions from seed. So I noticed today that the watermelon radishes are just coming up. So that's just in a week's time. Now the other stuff is not coming up yet. I've tried to use up some old seed, so we'll see. I'll give it another week, and if it's not coming up by then I'll have to reseed. But then I'll know at least that seed's not any good and I can just get rid of it. And also beside here, I planted the pak choy. And it's a nice green for stir frying. You get the nice stem and the greenery there. And I've got it close by here so I can feed it quite often. So you want it to grow fast and well. Thanks. So now we're in the greenhouse. This is my new purchase for this year, and I really like it. It's probably about twice the size of my other old greenhouse, my old plastic one, and it's been great having this space. So I'm starting to fill it up now. Over here we have all our zinnias, and I have more in the basement that I'm going to be moving out.
These were the zinnias that were downstairs?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Those are those tall zinnias that you had pictures of.
Yes,
yeah,
the Bernaries.
Yeah. And so here's the tomato crop, and it's doing really well. So these used to be in 4-inch pots like this. Actually, this is probably a 5-inch. So they were in a pot like this. So they were small pot like this, and they were quite tall. So what I did is I picked off the lower leaves off of the tomato, and then I put it right in the bottom of this gallon pot here, and then filled it up with soil. So as you did that, it'll root all along the stem there. So now I've got a nice big solid root ball here. And when you put that out into the ground, and I'll even try and put it in a little bit deeper as well. And just because it's got a good root ball on it and it'll help hold moisture, you have less tendency for the tomatoes to crack. They'll crack if they can't suck up enough moisture. So they're looking really nice, and we'll see anytime starting next weekend they can start going out. We'll just kind of watch the weather. Anywhere from then into the May 24th. May 24th long weekend is traditionally when you put your warm season plants out. So yeah, I'm very pleased with them. They're doing well.
I am also very pleased.
So now we're in the herb growing area. So I like to grow my herbs in pots. So here we have sage, thyme, we have lots of mint, 3 pots of mint, and 3 pots of oregano and lemon thyme. Now the mint winters over just fine, and usually in the springtime it's grown out from there and right at the edge there. So usually what I do is I dig up the mint, divide it up, and put a nice clump in the middle here. Start it all over again, and then it does really well. It's nice and fresh, and you don't have a hollow in the center there. And usually the thyme and the oregano winter over, but this year they didn't. So I'm starting out with new plants again. So I give them lots of room. And I put 3 plants of oregano out, and the thyme doesn't need so much room. I just put probably looks like 2 plants in there, and they've already grown since I had them in there. The sage is wintered over. I just cut the old stems back, and it's coming right nicely from the base. And again, I don't worry about the herbs so much feeding them because you like to grow them a little bit lean, but you have to make sure you water them well enough, and I give them a shot of fertilizer maybe every 2 weeks, something like that. So now we're in the blueberry patch. Originally I was going to have this episode to be about planting carrots and beets, but when I looked around my garden I thought, I have got so much other stuff to do that I thought I'm going to postpone that for a week. because it's getting on now. The blueberries are starting to bloom already, and I think the raspberries are starting to put a few buds on too as well. And I hadn't even fertilized them yet, so I thought, well, that's a priority, is just to get some fertilizer on these plants. Unfortunately, I didn't buy any peat moss yesterday when the stores were open, and so what I did is I just spread the manure around and some Gaia Green, and I forked that into the soil. But this week I'm going to buy some peat moss, because you want to have it acid. Blueberries you want about 5 to 5.6, which is quite acid soil, because that's what they prefer. So I'm going to pick up a bale of peat moss and I'll spread that over the whole thing, and then I'll work that into the soil as well too. And then I'll cover it with a layer of leaves and a layer of straw. The leaves as a nice mulch, inexpensive mulch, and the straw just to hold the leaves in place. Because they like a nice organic soil, nice woodsy soil. So as that rots down, that'll add a lot of organic matter to the soil. And I'll do the same thing with the raspberries as well too. Now traditionally raspberries, people usually put a pole on the end with a couple crossbars and wires. I never got around to doing that. I just pounded rebar in and tied them up, and it's working for me, so I'm just going to go with it. There was a fair bit of mulch left on there, and oftentimes what I would do is I'd pull the mulch away, put the manure down into the soil, and then put the mulch back on top. But because there wasn't that much there, and I was looking to do a lot of work in a short period of time, I just left a little bit of mulch that was there on and put the manure down, worked all that into the soil, and then I'll put another layer of mulch on top.
Look at this rhubarb. Oh my goodness. It's the size of my head. Well, no.
So maintenance of the garden is also very important. I think I like to aerate my soil. So here we have the peas. So this morning I just took my cultivator and just loosened up. And they also say the best time to weed is when there's no weeds. So you can see there's tiny little weeds, and by roughing them up like that, you disturb them, put air in the soil, and then the weeds are so small now that you can just disturb them, and then they give up.
Yeah, you don't want to wait until they've got big, thick roots.
Right, yes, and then this way you can just go through a garden really quickly, and you don't have to be pulling the weeds. You can just disturb the soil, and it disturbs the little weeds too. So I went through my onion patch, and I went through my pea patch. Anything that I don't have mulched. When the mulch, it keeps the soil, it doesn't get so compacted down from watering and from the rain, because it's got to filter through the mulch to get down to the soil. And hopefully there's lots of worms in there too, because the soil is constantly being moist, and I'm hoping there's lots of worms in there aerating through the soil as well too, and secreting fertilizer there as well too.
Bless you, worms.
So now we're in the onion patch, and I made the rows so that I could take my cultivator in between. And you don't want to be weeding through here just because there's a tiny little weed. But yeah, it's just nice just to cultivate through, and you don't have to spend a lot of time picking it, because it's kind of, the onions are small, and if you let a lot of weeds grow up. So I can weed through here at now in 10 minutes time, and it's just done easy. So if you do that every 2 weeks, you just save yourself a lot of work.
Genius.
So the cabbage plants, the cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts are still young yet, so I'm feeding them every week. And it's important, I don't have a lot of slugs, but I do have some. So every morning I come out, you can see the little damage on here. So every morning I come out and I check, if there's a damaged leaf, I just flip it over, because there's a good chance that maybe there'll be a little slug underneath that.
Hiding right there,
Hiding
probably.
right there, yeah.
They don't even hide in my garden.
No. So maintenance is important. Otherwise, all your hard work is going to go to naught.
Slug food.
Yeah. So check for slugs and give them a little shot of liquid food once a week, just for maybe another week or two, just to get them on a good path. Now over here, I'm making I've got my Chinese cabbage and my Savoy cabbage I want to put out, but I'm running out of space. So this area, I didn't have too much here. So I worked up the subsoil, And then I put a nice load of compost on here. Now I'm just trying to turn the compost into the existing soil. And here you can see the existing soil. So I'm really grateful to have all that nice compost because I can make a nice deep bed here.
Oh, there's a worm.
Oh yeah.
Hey, buddy.
And there's a little bit of couch grass and stuff here too as well. So yeah, I'll finish this later on and get my plants in. They're just over this direction here. So these are, as I mentioned before, the Chinese cabbage and the Savoy cabbage, and they're really a fast-growing cabbage. I'm not sure when I started these, but it wasn't that long ago. Now they are a little bit tender. We had frost last night, so that's why I have the tarps, and I just pull them over top of those cabbages because they're a little bit tougher. But these ones, I'm just going to put a bucket out here, and if it looks like it's going to be cold, I just put the bucket over top because they're quite a tender leaf here. And these ones you have to be, I find the earwigs get in these guys. They're kind of a crinkled cabbage, so they're not quite as compact as the other cabbages. So bugs can get in there and make a nice home in there. And usually I still get the center part of the cabbage okay, but I'm gonna try be a little bit more on it and try to keep the bugs out of them as much as I can. And here's the Savoy cabbages.
Ready to go to their new home.
Yep. And I don't grow a lot of these because they're not a keeper cabbage like the other cabbages. But the Chinese is great for stir fries. The Savoy cabbage is, actually I like it for making borscht because it's a little bit of a sweet cabbage. And it's just a little bit more tender. It's just the nice crinkly cabbage. So we'll watch the progress of these as they get out, and hopefully we'll get a nice crop out of these. So finally the asparagus is starting. So this was the first week that I've been able to harvest them, but I left a few on there just so I could show. Now these ones are actually a little bit too big, too old. I would have actually liked to pick them younger. And so you just go down to the bottom there and just slice through. And same thing here too. Now when you're cooking them, you just take them and you break them like that, and they kind of break at the woodiest part. So that's what you'll eat, and then this will just be compost, or I guess if you wanted to fry them up, you could do something like that.
How tall do you usually like to pick them at?
Let's see if we can find one that's a nice size here. A little bit taller than that, say about like that.
Okay.
And, but yeah, you can just see they're just starting to pop up here. There's more here.
Spotted ya. And all these
That's
guys are the
old stubs, yeah, from last year. So they're just, yeah, and here,
Oh, hey.
yeah. So I'll, probably tomorrow I can harvest this one. It'll just be a little bit taller. And these guys here, these are a little bit big too as well. That's pretty good. And then you can see how they're all starting here now.
Now, do you start your asparagus from seed?
Actually, I bought these crowns and I planted them, let's see, moved here 2017, so 2018 is when I planted them. So I bought crowns and they were already started. And then I dug a nice trench and put nice compost on the bottom underneath the asparagus and planted them down in a trench. And then as they grew, I kind of filled soil in around them. And so you like to do lots of preparation for them. And you start them down low because they kind of work their way up. The crown kind of increases on the upper side. So eventually they get kind of proud. So that's why it's nice to, now again, I fertilized these just today too. And I should have actually done it, quite a long time, at least 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. But it's hard to get everything done on a Sunday, and you kind of prioritize. And I thought, well, at least I'll give them a little bit of, so I didn't even take the mulch off. I just threw the manure down and the compost down and then worked it into that existing mulch. And now, after I give them a good water, tonight I'll probably water, I'll try tomorrow to put some leaves on top of this and some mulch down as well too, just to give lots of organic matter, just keep them nice and cool and moist and feed the soil.
This might sound like a silly question. Does one asparagus seed make one asparagus?
One asparagus plant,
Ah.
and then it'll make multiple asparagus spears from that plant.
So how old was the, what did you call it? The crown?
Crowns?
The
crowns,
crown.
yeah.
So how old was the crown, do you think, when you bought it?
I suspect it was probably a year old,
Okay.
something like that.
And then it started producing right away?
Well, it does start producing right away. I mean, they were very tiny little things, like you could just see them. And so you want to leave them for 2 to 3 years before you start harvesting.
And then they'll keep coming back every year?
Every year, yep.
For just as long as
Yeah,
one asparagus?
as long as they're looked after. You don't have grass in them at all. I have a bit of grass coming in over here. I'm going to, one of these days when I get a bit of time, I'm going to try and get that couch grass out of here, because you don't have grass in your asparagus patch. But yeah, as long as you keep feeding it well, it'll keep producing.
Amazing.
And you'll see later on in the season, it'll be the frond, the ferny foliage will be like really tall. That's why I have these rebar here, because it gets really tall and I tie it up to the rebar, and that stops it from falling and breaking and, you know, bending over in the wind and the rain.
Asparagus as tall as this?
Tall is it? Yeah.
Wow.
And at that point, we're not eating it anymore. So I eat it for about a month, something like that. And then after that, we quit eating it, and then just let it go to build itself up again.
Super.
Yeah. So just speaking of asparagus, here we have asparagus lettuce.
All right.
So I'm not sure, it doesn't quite look like the picture yet. So we've been busy eating the lettuce over there, the semi-head lettuce, and they've been great, beautiful, nice big heads. And so now we're having this loose leaf lettuce. But maybe these little new leaves are getting kind of crinkly looking. So I'm just kind of waiting and watching. So as soon as I finish that lettuce over there, then we can start taking all these side pieces off and let the center grow. And then we will get that asparagus lettuce from that. So this will be the second crop. And then I want to, probably this weekend, I want to start some more lettuce, probably romaine lettuce, and I'll grow them in these tubs over here, which is shady, because theoretically we should be starting getting into the warm weather by then. And while I'm at it, I'll probably start the beans and squash and corn and cucumbers as well too. And the beans I started right into 4-inch pots. The corn I do in plugs, long plugs, and the cucumbers as well in 4-inch pots too.
Ray, we gotta save some stuff for the next episode.
Right. Just giving you some advance warning. It's time to start those pretty quick.
Someone's been practicing.
My 3 lines. I'm okay in ad-libbing, but it's when I gotta remember something.
So
Yeah.
whenever you're ready.
Sure. So I really like my greenhouse, and if you like what you've seen, you can like and subscribe and ring the bell. Thank you.